Good morning and welcome to the 29th NCAA Rowing Championships here on Lake Lanier, 30 years after it hosted the greatest show on earth, the Atlanta Olympic Games. And wow, what a morning it's been. We've been here admiring these beautiful conditions. We've got a slight tail cross breeze coming down this course, and we've got a jam-packed day of racing. We've had a little bit of a change in the programme. Tomorrow's inclement conditions have meant that we are cramming a lot of racing into today's programme. We'll hear by about 11:30 local time whether we're set to change anything, shift some of the D1 semi-finals that we've got programmed for today back to tomorrow's racing programme. But we keep you well up to date with that. My name is Camilla Hadland-Horrocks, here to bring you all the action from today's pinnacle of college racing. And I'm joined by Lindsay Shoup and Grace Latz. Lovely to have you in the booth, ladies. And Lindsay, tell me, what is it that you're most looking forward to about this weekend?
When it comes to the NCAAs, you never know what you're going to get. There are teams that have maybe had to race 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, but we don't know what kind of speed they've gained in the last couple of weeks. And from what we heard talking to some of the crews yesterday, it sounds like a lot of people have gained speed. So once they're on the water side by side, that's when we'll really see who has peaked at the right spot at, again, this amazing historic venue that we have here. Yeah,
and Grace, you know, we talked a little bit about adaptability with some of the athletes yesterday. We just heard about the racing schedule program changes. What does that mean for athletes competing?
Yeah, I think that's what's going to be the interesting deciding factor. Can they adapt to having to say two 2Ks in a day if we're going to be running some of these D1 semis or, you know, straight from our heats to our finals? That is a big shift. You don't have a day in between to rest and recover, so that's also something you have to train and prepare for. How will the athletes handle that?
Yeah, well, we'll be joining, you can see there, some of our D3 crews up on the start of the second 8-heat start line. But before we get into the intricacies of the D3 programs and who we're expecting to show face here this weekend, let's take a look at the D2 coaches poll. We'll be seeing the D2 athletes going in about half an hour's time in the 8 heats, starting at 8:02 local time. But Western Washington topping out those polls, Lindsay.
Western Washington has a long history in the Division II program. They have the most first place votes. They're coming in here. We talked to some of the athletes yesterday with great confidence based on the fact that they have really relied on their training and let that develop their confidence. But they have numerous national championships under their belt at this point, 9. They've been runners-up 5 times, so to see them at the top is not a surprising thing.
Yeah, and we'll see them go off in their 8 heat at 8:02. They won't meet Humboldt, who are probably their closest rivals in that little matchup, who go in the other heat, Grace.
Yeah, they're going to be really fighting to try to top out Western Washington, and then Embry-Riddle, third, last year's winners, are also going to be in that fight.
Well, we're jumping now to the D1 coaches poll, and I mean, Tennessee, what an amazing story we've got here. They are currently pitted to be our kind of overall leaders in the votes. Lindsay, they have just had a phenomenal rise, haven't they, into this championship?
Yeah, and they're tracking properly with their trajectory of racing since March. You know, Texas, Stanford, and Tennessee have all raced each other, not all 3 on the same waterway at one time, which is what we'll get to have this weekend. But those 3 have all traded blows in terms of who's come out on top, but Tennessee is the one that seems to have elevated ever since. And watching them, actually, the technical style of their rowing at the SEC champs was really quite solid.
Yeah, well, we'll have to wait and see. We've got the D1 8 heats going at 8:34, but we're going to jump now to those D3 8 heats. This is the second 8, so we've got here the coaches poll for the overall D3 rankings. Bates are currently topping the votes. We're going to see them in lane 4 in just a second's time, but we've had some really good conversations with some of these programs, Grace, and I think the thing that has really I guess spoken to me is the sense of enthusiasm, of excitedness coming here to an Olympic lake. This is the first time for a lot of these programs, athletes, that they're at a venue of this size and capacity.
Yeah, they can definitely feel, we heard presence used a lot with this venue. You can see the rings everywhere. The lake is built out beautifully. The infrastructure, the ability to watch for the spectators is going to be fantastic. And so we're talking about first time maybe here at their venue, but the last race of their championship season for a lot of these seniors. And being able to watch the newcomers have their national championship experience be here is incredibly special for them.
Well, they'll be feeling all of those feelings now as they sit and look on the start line. We've got William Smith going in 2, Tufts in 3, Bates in 4, and Catholic in lane number 5. And here we go, the first race of the NCAA Championships now underway. The first heat of this Division 3 second 8 run. And for me, I think it's probably Tufts getting the better of that start there, about a deck up on the rest of the field, Lindsay.
Tufts is a program that came out for the last 2 years on top with both boats, performing very, very well here. So to see them come off of the start, that's just another stepping stone from what they maybe did last year, that they're under Coach Lily Siddall, doing a really nice job over there, just continuing a trajectory and building a legacy perhaps over time, right? You get the buy-in and then you can just kind of keep building from there.
Yeah, they've got a good record here. Tufts from the Malden River, the Jumbos, who are jumping out of the start almost half a length up now at this very early stage. And I think even more actually when we go to the drone, they're going to be vying for that clear water. Great tussle back in second either side of them. They'll be looking to William Smith just on the right-hand side of the athletes. The athletes will be looking to on the left to Bates, who are having a great bow-to-bow tussle for that second place.
Knowing that everything's been adjusted because of the potential for inclement weather tomorrow, you must perform here right now. There is no rep. There is no second chance to make it to the grand final. You have to come in top 3 in this race to have your opportunity to go for that national championship. So come out with your best race, because the only thing you need to manage right now is what's happening in this moment. This race, don't worry about the rest of it, because you got to take care of this one, which Tufts is definitely doing.
Yeah, Tufts has really grabbed this race by the scruff of the neck. They've already got that nice open water. They'll be able to look back, have that confidence, sit on top of the race. But that tussle for second still ongoing, Grace. And how important is it in this heat? Top 3 go through to the grand final here. They know with that clear water now back to Catholic, they've probably done enough to secure that place. How important is it to get that psychological advantage in second versus third?
Oh, it's a big one, because especially if you want to claim a medal in that next race, you gotta sharpen the iron now. You want to know that you have the edge. You don't want to just sit and wait, think you have something in reserve, because they have to do 2 races in one day. So you're wanting to throw out all the cards you've got now.
Well, it's unchanged here as we come up to 2.5 minutes gone in this race. Still William Smith in that second spot, slotting in behind and actually perhaps advancing on a little bit more here ahead of the crew from Bates, who I think just chucked in a little bit of a pressure 10 there just to try and latch back on to that sort of faster moving William Smith crew, but it's dwindling now, it's fading. I just don't know whether Bates is going to have another kick here to try and get back into that second place.
And this is something that we don't know the answer to, because certain coaches do come down knowing that they now have to race twice in the same day, potentially, unless something changes from now. Would you want to show all of your cards knowing that you have this third top 3 slot in control at this point, given that Catholic is a bit off of the mark in terms of the speed of the 3 that we have out in front? But based on the angles that we're seeing, Bates might have actually come back into what William Smith had on them a little bit earlier, and that's going to be a confidence boost, having more confidence in the second half of your race as more and more strokes tick by, that you can stay a little more internal, stay a little more focused, because they see in this race, okay, they got ahead of us early, but now we're not letting them go, and just one by one we're able to kind of get back into that lead.
Yeah, and Tufts who are out in front by a considerable margin here. What do we think that they're going to do here as we come into the final 750? Do you think they're going to practice that wind in case there's pressure? We've got to remember there's another heat here. We don't know what the speed is of the crews that are coming up. Trinity, Williams, Puget Sound. Do you think that they're going to have a bit of a practice run coming into the line and opening up that speed?
I mean, I think that's going to depend on their fitness and if they want to make a statement now. So I'm curious to see what their tactic may be, if they will hold back a little bit, because they are sitting comfortably right now, but you don't want to be too comfortable.
In this sport, you can never be too far ahead. Anything can happen, between now and the line. They do have a comfortable margin. Anytime that if you look across the race course and you don't see 2 boats overlapping, that there's clear water, open water between the stern, the trailing end of the boat, and the bow of the next boat, that's a decent amount of space that you have, a comfortable lead that you have on another crew, but at the same time, you can't count on it until the horn goes.
I'd be really enjoying this if I was in the Tufts crew. Look at you can see the little ripples. That it's a lovely cross tail, which means that they've got the wind behind them. They're able to utilize it to float forwards, use that recovery, but it's not windy enough that it's picking up and allowing the waves to sort of catch the blades. So I bet they're having a great time out there on the water. Their placement looks really good as well, right? They're getting the blades in nice and sharp. That can be quite difficult to do in a tailwind when the boat's getting away from you, right? So I think they're looking nice and controlled out here at the front of this field.
You know, and it looks like they have fewer than 500 meters to go here in the race, and they are just continuing to maintain the lead that they have on the other crews. So looking at will they wind it up, we'll find that out shortly. You don't have that many opportunities to sit on a 6 boats across race throughout the race season. So a lot of coaches come in with the mindset that we need to practice all of our parts. We can't just wait until the final or wait until it's the next thing before we choose to actually execute this thing in the moment with the high emotion and the high pressure.
Well, I think our question's been answered about whether we're going to see a little wind here from the Tufts crew as they just start to get a little bit more lively. They'll be in sight of the finish town now. Cox will be calling them in to the final few boys in this race. That gap, I think, has actually opened up back to that second place battle. And really, I think it's whether Bates can pull up alongside here William Smith for that second place. I'm unsure given this current angle, but yeah, it looks like they're still in the race here for second. Well, given the early start, we've pulled racing almost an hour earlier, and the crowds are here in force. You can hear them cheering these crews in towards the line. It's probably about 20 strokes here to go for Tufts University's second 8 in this Division 3 program. And, well, what a start it is to this weekend for them. They could be wrapped up by today. You know, it's all of this kind of inclement weather has meant that their racing plan, their racing schedules all changed, and they know that their final will be taking place this afternoon, so it's going to be back to rest for them. They're over the line here at the first day of the NCAA Championships with a win to put them through to the grand final. It was then clear water for William Smith over Bates in the end for that second place, but both will meet each other once again in the grand final. They'll get an opportunity to rectify that, and it will be Catholic, who are just off the back of that field, that will progress through to the petite final. I mean, let's talk a little bit about that sort of racing schedule change again, right? Like, multiple races in one day. I think for some of these athletes that have been walk-ons, that are new to the sport, this is quite a big and nerve-wracking deal for them, right? And a big competition like this, having a huge schedule change that means they're racing multiple times on one day. How psychologically do you think the coaches are just sort of calming their nerves and giving them the tools that they need to be able to execute that change well?
Yeah, if you've prepared yourself throughout the season as a coach guiding these athletes, depending on how much experience they have, the big conversations have already taken place. And so now they actually have less time to sit and think, and that's actually can be to their benefit. Rather than worrying, thinking about things that they don't have control over, it's just, okay, what's the next thing? Recover, and they just have small tasks to take care of throughout the day that can be to their benefit by condensing the program. They have the fitness. In a single practice, they'll do multiple 2Ks to get here. So having the language, flipping the psychology of how your perspective is really what's going to be helpful throughout this day.
Well, I'm sure the same conversations will have happened here ahead of the second 8 heat, the second 8 for Division 3. Wellesley in 2, Trinity in 3, Williams in 4, and Puget Sound in lane number 5. Let's see who will be joining Tufts, William Smith and Bates in the grand final, subject to confirmation of results. And it's nice and still here up at the start. And we're still not even sat at attention yet. Just a few calm moments whilst they tap around, and it's a slight crosswind. It's a bit of a challenge here for these Coxes, right?
Just a little bit of a quarter, and you can see the trees on either side is going to protect it to a certain extent, but the fact that it's a trailing wind, a tailwind, a wind somewhat out of the north to a certain, you're going to actually have a more protected portion of the course at the start when you're sitting completely still, and when you have to sit at the half slide or three-quarter slide catch, depending on what your start sequence actually is, that's actually when the boat is the least stable. So to have the most stable water in the least stable spot is going to be to their benefit to get off cleanly here.
Yeah, definitely. We can see Wellesley there on the left-hand side of your picture just making a few final adjustments, and actually they chose to come away from the starting blocks, readjust, and then move back in. Grace, I guess, you know, you want to make sure that you are absolutely satisfied with that racing line going out the start, because any adjustments that Cox needs to make can have a huge impact later on, right?
Yeah, you have to be an advocate for yourself, and especially in the coxswain seat. And it can be a nerve-wracking moment to sort of maybe press up against with what the referees are asking for. You know, you're looking at the schedule, you're looking at the time. They've got only a certain window to go off to be on time. But they know they need to fight for the best shot, for fairness, for themselves.
Well, there we've got the crew listing for the Wellesley crew, and that is Cox, Sophia Lutch that made that call just to pull out of the starting blocks, get them resettled and back in alignment. And off we go here, the short, sharp strokes that get us underway in Heat 2 here of the Division 3 Women's Second Eights. And, well, hard to tell from this angle who got the best start, but it's nearest to us here on the finish tower side. For me, I think that's the crew from Williams that is sneaking ahead by barely anything ahead of Trinity.
Williams is a crew that has had a long history here as well. Bates is another one that we have seen have a long history in the sport, and so for a number of years in a row, they've had a couple of different coaches over the years. But to have that kind of see it, be it mentality of, oh, this team has been here before, whatever you're looking for in terms of finding that kind of trajectory speed, the confidence to sit here, even if you haven't necessarily been the ones to do it, it can help you. And so Williams had that nice quick start. Looks like maybe crew next to them that Trinity is also picked up, and they've kind of taken them along with them.
Yeah, Trinity, you take that start sequence, you were talking about it before, Lindsay, whatever it may be, those sort of short, sharp half strokes, three-quarter strokes to get you out the blocks, to get that big, heavy boat up and moving. It's then got to settle. It's got to get into racing rhythm, and it looks like Trinity's actually executed that really well to get ahead, Grace.
Yeah, and sometimes you start to hit your stride after you've got the high strokes. Maybe they're a little bit better once the stroke is a little bit longer. They're finding their groove together. They're in sync. They're adding to that momentum like a slingshot instead of, getting out of the blocks hot and fast. But they're pretty close here, neck and neck, into that first 500.
Yeah, pretty close, and I think actually Williams have regathered themselves. They've perhaps sort of relocked in, had that call to go, do you know what, let's not let them row through us, let's not let them get away. And I think that sort of clarity of what the response needs to be in situ. They'll probably have had a race plan, but having someone come up alongside, try to take those strokes to cut through you, they've got to have a little bit of a response and a regather. And it's been really effective. What a great race we've got here up front for the lead, Lindsay.
It's an interesting position to be in, because you have to stay completely internally focused so that you don't lose any energy by thinking about something else. Because even that micro amount of energy that it takes to kind of let your mind go outside of what's happening in your own boat, you have to stay aware at least of what's going on, and that's really where the coxswain is going to come into play, to know just how much information to kind of give them about this. Because right now, both of those two lead crews between Trinity and Williams, neither of the athletes in those boats are probably really confident in the fact that one or the other of them is ahead, because they are so close to each other right now.
Yeah, I believe that Trinity got a really experienced program coming back into this second eight, from what I understand. So they'll have the tools, they'll have the experience, they'll have been in this position before as a group to respond to whatever's thrown at them. I'm sure that the head coach Peter Graves has had some really good words with the group of what to do in this kind of circumstance when you're looking eye to eye with a crew coming into halfway. This is going to be a sensational race for the lead, and of course, Grace, just for honours, really, because they're going to have to do it all again in the grand final should the results stand. In third place over there, that's Wellesley. We should probably give them a call out. If the results stay as they are, they will also be stamping their ticket through to the final of this Division 3 second eights round, and it's Puget Sound that are just off the back in this particular heat. But they're coming towards us here in the line. What a shot this is. What a sensational venue this is. It almost just feels like a bit of a stadium, right? Those surrounding trees, it feels nice and enclosed, and the intensity for this head-on-head battle between Williams and Trinity, the stage is set.
We saw just a moment ago with Tufts being well out in front. Tufts was the winner the last couple of years. Williams came runner up to them the last couple of years. So this is a step forward for Trinity, for them to be positioned in this way, where they're up there with the speed that has been the benchmark for the last couple of years, last two 24 and 25 championships.
Yeah, and based on their 1,000-meter time, they're only a second off in total time if they're continuing at that speed against what Tufts threw down in that first heat.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, this is where the psychological, the sort of strategic games are at play. We were talking about what the first heat were going to do when they reached this point. It was a very different blueprint of a race, right? We had one very clear leader. Here in this race, wow, you can barely choose between them the whole way down this course. If anything, I think that Trinity have just started to wrestle the lead by a couple of seats. That bow pair that, from the Trinity crew on the far side of your picture are going to be looking back, knowing that they can see the other crew. They'll know that they've got that slight advantage, but it's just going to spur them on, Lindsay.
They, coming in here, one thing that they don't know is what happened in the race ahead of them. So all that they know that they're doing is we need to have our best 4 quarters of racing that we can put together, and then when we get back to the dock, maybe we'll find out what happened, and that will kind of maybe elevate them. If it was more than what they expected, it'll give them confidence if it's exactly what they expected, but then to turn around and clear it out before you have to go and then meet the crews side by side, which is going to be a very fun, interesting race when that does go down between these two crews along with Tufts from the previous heat.
Well, this third 500, the story has been all about Trinity, who have been eking out seat by seat a lead over the crew from Williams, who had that great settle into the first 250, but their ongoing pace just doesn't seem to be able to match that of the Trinity crew, who have been sort of diesel engineing it through that third 500 and pulling away, and it's almost a seat per stroke now, Grace.
Yeah, they're really on a charge. I know that they're probably living up this moment. They could probably hear us here in the crowd. They know they're getting towards the finish line with every stroke. They're just trying to open it up and open up that lead.
And the crowds do start to make their noise here as they come into the final 250 meters, perhaps less. And I think they'll be vying for a length, which who'd have thought that when we got to the halfway point, right? It was so close, barrel ball for barrel ball between these two leading crews. But Trinity have got the wind under their sails and using that great momentum just to push them onwards. And I really do think they'll be trying to cut that cord, cut their stern away from the bows of the crew from Williams, and just get that, again, that advantage going into that grand final to go, do you know what? We were able to pull that length out in that final 750, and look where it got us.
Yeah, and then having a psychological boost right when you're most psychologically vulnerable, because this is the toughest part of the race physiologically. It's about to be done. That is a great thing, a great reinforcement to have, knowing that you got to, again, turn around and do it again today.
Well, there they go over the line. It will be for Trinity in this Division 3 second heat. Provisional results will suggest they will be going through to the grand final alongside their contenders there from Williams. They treated us to a brilliant race there, every single stroke down this course on Lake Lanier. And third place, well, it seems to me like it was the crew from Wellesley that hung on to also face the remaining crews in that next final, and Puget Sound will come in fourth for the petite final. But we're already underway with our next race on the course. This is also Division 3. It's the first eights now, and Heat 1 will see Wellesley feature again against Bates, Trinity and Catholic in lanes 2, 3, 4 and 5. And, well, let's see how that speed from the second eights translates up here to the first eights, Lindsay. And out of the blocks, well, just trying to figure out someone in the centre of the course. We'll get a better look here overhead. Trinity once again, wow. And like you were just saying, Lindsay, they'll have no idea how their second eight just did. It'll be great to, sort of once they get off the water, reconvene, but it's early days still in this race.
And look how much tighter this field is compared to what we've seen so far this morning, where it's just maybe a deck for Trinity right now, so just where none of the rowers are sitting out in front of the bow of Bates next to them. From last year, Tufts, Bates, Williams are the three crews that qualified straight through from the heats to the finals, so to see some familiar names kind of out in front of the field is just kind of picking up on last year. Trinity, however, is going to be a new as far as compared to last year and the year before, going straight through to the final here. So a great show for Trinity so far. And as I speak, we've got Bates there kind of little by little seeming to take a little bit of the lead that Trinity had on them early back per stroke.
Do we think this is surprising? Given Bates's second eight were down in third in that first heat, now sort of challenging for the lead in the first eight, you can just see, I guess, like how programmatically there can be such differences, amongst the squads, amongst the boats. It's great for Bates to be up here contending for the lead, right, Grace?
Yeah, and I mean, they also might, having had such a strong second eight, they might be used to having that direct challenge early on in the race. So they have a little bit more patience. They know they have 4 quarters of racing to complete this and put this together. So it looks like they're only about within a foot now of Trinity off to their side. They had that patience. They know they have got this fitness. They can claw their way ahead.
Well, this would be a great result for Trinity. You know, up here, we've just seen a brilliant performance from their second day. They're all the way down in 4th in the Division 3 rankings. You know, to be up here battling alongside Bates, who were very comfortably first in those coaches' rankings, they will be really chuffed, I think, at this point in the race.
And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier on in the program, where depending on what you've done and what speed you've found in the last couple of weeks since your last race, so that gives coaches and athletes a time to kind of go, okay, decompress a little bit. We know that we've made it to the national championship. We were selected for it. And so now what can we do with this time with just a different kind of perspective shift? Oftentimes school goes away, grading goes away. So then some pressure on the student side of the student athlete starts to go away, such that you can then have this elemental rise in terms of boat speed, which may be some of the things that have come into play here for Trinity.
Absolutely. You know, I think, especially at this late end of the season where it is that kind of tightening up, those last little sprinkles of speed work, of sort of mental preparation for big championships, you can see those advancements, like you say, in the weeks leading up to the championships that, you know, they just wouldn't have had in those earlier matchups in the season.
Yeah, it's looking exciting. So we've got Bates now out in front, Trinity in second, but Wellesley out there in lane 2 at the top of the screen is clawing their way in. Again, we've got top 3 who advance to the final, but they want to have a showdown here in this first heat.
It's a beautiful arrowhead, isn't it, there? Bates in the center, sort of piercing through, creating that nice sort of pointed end with the crews either side of them, neck and neck. And I think you called it right, Grace. It is the crew on the near side to the finish tower. It's Trinity just here closest to us on the pictures that are just ahead. But giving it a great go there, Wellesley on the far side. They've almost just crept up back into this race, I think, as we were focusing up on our 2 leaders. But it's just at this point, as we come into the sprinting stages, I've got a really good feeling here about what's happening on the near side of the course for Trinity, because they have just been grinding, and that bow ball now sits on the bow woman of the Bates crew. This could be a real showdown.
It looked like right as we crossed into that 500 meters to go, which is where all these crews are now, that it looked like both Bates and Trinity took some sort of movement around where it just looked like a little more energy injection right as they crossed over. The rate didn't change a ton, but you could just see like a little bit of infusion of speed for that moment, which, you know, if Bates did that early, then maybe either Trinity had it also in their plan, or their coxswain responded to that movement, knowing that the finish line is coming pretty quickly.
Talking of responses, this has been a brilliant response here from the crew from Bates, who saw that pressure coming, have managed to pull their boat back out towards the line. They really didn't want to feel the pressure in this opening heat. They want to save it all for the final, and actually what came down to just, you know, a deck between them with 250 meters to go is now going to open back out to almost a length here, Grace. What a brilliant response here from the crew from Bates.
I can see the coxswain from Bates looking over at the Trinity crew next to them, calling that bow ball back down the line, saying, I want the bow ball on 6, on 7C, on 8, pass it back. And I think that's really motivating this crew towards the line.
Well, it's being held here, this move from Bates. Trinity really desperately do not want to let go of that overlap that they've worked so hard for through the middle stages of this race, but they are going to need to work extremely hard for it over the line. I think they'll achieve it, because here it comes. Bates over the line for this Division 3 first 8 opening heat. Both will progress through to the grand final, and it's then the crew over on the far side from Wellesley that will finish ahead of Catholic. But that was a real treat, and I think we've got the second heat coming up. Even these opening races are getting me excited for the finals already, Lindsay.
Because you can just imagine putting them all on the course together and seeing what kind of overlap they'll have. It almost seems like, you know, Trinity maybe came out and threw some surprises to some people, and so no one's going to be taking anyone for granted when we step through to the final later today.
Well, we're already back up at the start. This sort of compressed racing schedule has meant that we're on sort of 8-minute centres. Races running every 8 minutes. We're going to be busy here in the commentary box trying to bring you all the action. And there go the first strokes once again of this second heat of the Division 3 first 8. And we've got William Smith in lane number 2, Williams in lane 3, Tufts in 4, and Puget Sound in lane number 5. Top 3 to advance through to the grand final. And, well, let's take a look once again. I'm really loving the rhythm that we've got coming from the crew from Tufts, who are the ones just, I say just out in the lead. Puget Sound also taking it to them in these opening 20 strokes.
You know, we talked to some of the athletes from Puget Sound yesterday with that. What you see in their crew is a triple bucket, so 2 oars on the same side, another 2 oars on the same side, another 2 oars on the same side. That is not a traditional way of doing things. They actually call it a trough, kind of jokingly among their crews, among their team. And the reason why they chose to do it is because it helps them make the boat faster. It does create a little bit of wiggle that the coach actually recognized. However, it overall was the better option for them in that crew, which is, again, unique approach to the racing, and it's putting them in the hunt, at least in the beginning of this race.
Yeah, and I feel like the start must be the most challenging with those kind of rigging setups, right? Because with these kind of bucket setups, it works really well for trying to straighten the boat out sometimes to equalize that power from both, I was going to say stroke side and bow side. You guys call it port and starboard here, don't you?
Yes.
But out of the start, when there's lots of power and lots of energy, it can be really challenging to set that boat up, and Puget Sound did that really well. They're coming back into the mix now. They're just starting to fall back a little bit from the leading crew. It's Tufts out in front who are looking to break away from this pack, and coming into second, well, Williams starting to show face ahead of William Smith. But really very close to call here in this second heat, Grace, and it's just a very different kind of racing strategy, isn't it, when you're in a pack and we've got top 3 to go through, overlap between all of those potential qualifiers, right?
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be. They're all fighting for that top 3 spot, so I don't think we're going to see anyone let their foot off the gas for that second and third place.
I mean, you can see Tufts out in front there. They just, the length and the power that you can see by comparison to the other crews on the water, you can just see that it's an appropriate, I don't want to say reach because that feels like a weakened term, but the length that they're showing in the water right now is really why they're out in front. They're the 2 previous years national champions. Williams was behind them. So again, seeing them out in front, it's what we saw earlier in the 2V.
Yeah, well, Tufts, I think, really kind of outperforming their ranking here across the board, because we saw their second day walk all over the competition in their opening heat. It was clear water from the first quarter of the race, and they're looking to achieve the same thing. This is really clearly something that Lily Sadal, in her 3rd season here at Tufts, will be looking to establish as part of the program. Get out early, get out and look back on the rest of your competition. We've seen both Tufts crews do that, and it's working really well for them. They're leaving the rest of the field to fight it out for that second place.
And a really good fight here between William Smith and Williams at the top of the screen, or now on the left-hand side of the screen. It looked like William Smith, as they're closing towards the 1,000, were about a foot or 2 ahead of Williams, which I'm sure is very exciting based on the ranking coming in here. They're having a huge upset, which would be fantastic for them.
Yeah, that would be, but early stages yet, right? Like, we just do not know, especially again, given that they've got their final on the same day, what is going on here, whether there's a sort of like, let's stick to our pace, let's stick to our rhythm and save the head-to-head racing for later on today. I just don't know. You know, it's so difficult to call. You know,
that what you were saying, just from a coaching perspective, they're in the 3rd 500. You have to manage the first 1,000, push reset, because then it's basically like, let's actually start the race after everybody's super fatigued, which is kind of that 1,000-meter mark. Anything can happen in the first 1,000, but I say this because with Tufts out in front, it seems like get the boat up to speed, stay long, stay strong, do what you do, don't worry about anything dramatic, right? We haven't seen major moves, major adjustments in rate, pressure, that sort of thing. It's just kind of get the length, get the motor, off you go.
Coming back to this Tufts crew out in front, you know, you talk about their length, getting up, getting the motor going. Again, we saw it with their second day. I just love that we can see their placement in the water so clearly. It's so difficult to do in the tailwind, and they're really nailing it, and so easy to get carried away when it's fast water, fast conditions, and just miss that catch. You know, you can see the bow girl, they're really getting her blade in, and I think that's what's giving them that speed, along with that long, strong, tenacious strokes. But the race for a second. Grace, you called it. This between Williams and Williams-Smith over on the far side. I really wouldn't put either of them out of the race here. It's phenomenal to see Williams-Smith on the far side, Williams on the near side. Think Williams-Smith just with the advantage at the moment, but we are running out of water here, and I think that Williams are going to need to make a response now.
Yeah, we're in the last quarter of the race. Williams-Smith about a half boat up over Williams. Saw a little bit of a bump there out of Williams-Smith, just ever so slightly. I'm sure they have a bit of a confidence boost. Again, they'll see each other again if they keep up this pace, but it's quite a confidence boost to have this happen.
Yeah, a real confidence boost, and they'll start to hear the voices of the crowd here on Lake Lanier coming into earshot, and it's given them a lift. It's given them another couple of seats here ahead of the competition from Williams, who again will know that they've got a space through to that grand final if they stay in this position, but you know, just think about that great level of confidence that Williams-Smith are going to have going. Just look at what we achieved in that second half of the race.
Especially kind of upsetting the seeding that they're coming in here with. Puget Sound is still in this race too. They aren't completely off of the back of this pack. So seeing them kind of come into this as well, like as a crew that hasn't been here in a little while, that they are showing a solid race here in the varsity for the Division 3. But that Williams-Smith crew just a few moments ago, you could see their stroke rate went up a little bit higher than what Williams was doing next to them. Almost like they wanted to ensure that second place spot is going to give you a better lane going into the final. It's going to give you a confidence boost going in the final, especially if there might be inclement weather. It's going to change the conditions on the course. Put yourself in the best possible position so that you are then in the best possible position moving forward.
Well, speaking of best possible positions, I think there's no question that Tufts will walk away with that first place over the line. A brilliant program from the Tufts program this morning, and they will have clear water across the line ahead of Williams-Smith, who did manage to hang on ahead of Williams. What a turnout for the books there for them, upsetting the provisional sort of rankings coming into this competition. We'll have to see whether they can repeat that performance into the final, though. It's a long day.
Those speeds, too, are faster than what we saw in the previous heat by a significant margin.
Yep, that was just what I was logging. Each one of those top three faster than the winner out of Heat 1.
Well, this is going to make for some great finals later on today, and we'll be bringing you all of that action this afternoon. But we move from Division 3 to Division 2 now. 3 crews going in each of these heats. We're going to start with the Division 2 8. Heat 1, Jefferson, Western Washington and Embry-Riddle, with 2 to advance through to the grand final here. And we'll see in just a second's time Rollins, Humboldt and Seattle Pacific in the next heat. So just 3 crews here, and it's 2 spots to go through, so the race not to be lost, Lindsay.
The race not to be lost is one way to put it. We have 6 crews here now that we're shifting to the Division 2. Division 3 is going to be 8 teams that come. Division 2 is going to be 6 teams that come. And so that's where you see these smaller groupings and why we now have 2 that go through to the grand final. In the past with Division 2, it was top 1 only, and then they had a rep. But because, again, of the weather change, this is now a different scenario that every one of these crews is looking at compared to what they were expecting coming into this weekend.
Yeah, and again, adaptability, versatility, all qualities that we heard smattered through when we spoke to the coaches, the athletes yesterday. It was a huge topic of implementation for these programs and these coaches, because they know how unpredictable the conditions could be, and also just the racing can be. We're out of the blocks here now, and it looked like Western Washington with the best of starts, but really impressed actually with the Embry-Riddle sort of, I guess, grunt out of that starting block. They were really aggressive and absolutely loved that, and they're really trying to clinch onto the coattails of Western Washington here. Just Jefferson falling off the pace ever so slightly, but you know, again, 3-boat race, it's all quite intense here in the centre of the course.
Yeah, and I think Embry-Riddle's got a lot of hunger. They came out as a really great champion last year, and they're a newer program. I believe they're only in their 5th or 7th year, and so they've risen very quickly in a short amount of time. Western Washington, a storied program, very accomplished within the national championship, so they have the confidence and the legacy going to this. But those women from Embry-Riddle look hungry and ready.
Yeah, and we spoke to Embry-Riddle yesterday, didn't we, Lindsay? And they talked about how they needed them to be hungry to reset after a bit of a bumpy period in their coaching setup. They've really come through quite a tough period of time. They needed to regather and show that hunger and determination coming into this championships.
Grit is the term that they use. Each of the athletes on the team gets a piece of gold sandpaper. It has to do with their kind of one of their team mantras is this grittiness. You know, back in April they had a coaching shuffle, and so now you can imagine that as they kind of recollect themselves, that maybe they're going to gain speed as they move throughout the rest of the season. They did win this event last year, which took them the team title, which is amazing. They actually joined the NCAA in 2017, so relatively new. They've had a club since the 90s, but you know, another piece here is here we are. They're looking like they're almost a clear water over the second place right now, so definitely setting a tone. Still very early in the race. You don't want to take anything for granted here in any of these races, but right now, I mean, you've got pilots in this boat. I mean, they look like they want to take off and fly from here, and yet, you know, we're rowing boats.
Yeah, I mean, talk to me a little bit about the Embry-Riddle program. I was fascinated to hear that they're all aeronautical engineers, pilots, definitely not pirates, but they're feeding programs like NASA, you know, down there in Florida. What a remarkable thing. And this really is a celebration of collegiate and student athlete rowing here at this NCAA championships. I think this is what it's all about, right? Studying and performing at the highest level. All of these crews, you know, really exude that, but particularly Embry-Riddle, what an amazing place to balance those studies.
You know, and the interesting thing here, every single one of the athletes in this, 100% of them have jobs coming out of college. So they've managed the student side. That's the first. That is the priority for the school. Student up above. Once you get down to the third piece, the student and then the person and then the athlete is the piece that they kind of build it. So you get the right people on the bus, and then you give them the skills in the sport that the skills in the sport will help them throughout life after that. So 100% of them going to have jobs or go back to school for a higher degree, which is really impressive, doing both things.
What a record, hey? I'd be shouting about that from the rooftops if that was me. But look, we've got to give some credit here to Western Washington, who are the crew out in front by about a boat length. The Vikings, I think, expected to do extremely well here at this championships. And again, having spoken to that group of athletes yesterday, they were talking about trusting the process, you know, and they're very internally focused, these guys from Western Washington. They talk a lot about the coaching mantra that Courtney Moeller sets out. She's so early on in her coaching journey with Western Washington, just in her second season, but trust the process is what she had to say to the athletes every session, every single time they go out. You've done the training, and they clearly have here, Grace. You know, it's something that's really working for them as a group, right?
Yeah, I think they can trust the process and have a lot of confidence in their race and in their stroke. They don't look hurried. They don't look rushed. The conditions aren't handling them. They're handling the conditions that they have, and they're really taking charge.
Yeah, for the majority of them, it's their first ever NCAA championships for this group, so they'll be feeling, I'm sure, some tingles, some nerves, some pressure that will have melted away, I think, throughout the course of this race. I'm sure you will have both felt it, having sat up on the start line, either here or internationally, that, you know, those first evers, the first championships, those first big competitions, once you take those first few strokes and you settle into it, this is the kind of result it can produce, right?
You know, in talking about the coaching style, really leaning into the training, one of the athletes had said, you know, that they've earned their confidence, which is exactly what you would want your athletes to be saying, that daily preparation, day in and day out, you're leaning on your teammates, you're leaning on your training, and that really does just elevate the confidence. Western Washington has won 9 national titles, the most recent being in 2024. They've been runner-up 5 times, so there is a long history in this program. They won several national titles consecutively, like from 2005 to 11, you know, many in a row. So coming kind of back to that history here now that we're seeing them well out in front, Clearwater by about a length over last year's winner.
Well, we've got to remember that their closest competition we'll probably see in the next heat going Humboldt, who were sort of nipping at their heels throughout the season at the GNAX, at Weira. They've been closing that gap, the Californians, ever so slightly every single race. So, you know, they will be using this as a bit of practice, I'm sure, knowing that the next heat that's coming down the course, they've got some really stiff competition lining up at the start that should they meet in the final, and of course, you know, anything can happen, but on paper we're expecting them to meet in the final. They're going to want to be sort of building that confidence yet again, Lindsay, you know, as I say, earning it, gaining it, so that they go and line up on that start line for a final with as much behind them as they can.
You know, I mean, just the energy that they had between the athletes in the 8 and the athletes in the 4 as well. It seemed very cohesive between those two different crews that each of these teams brings in the Division 2. Is going to be an 8 and a 4 for this grouping as opposed to 2 8s like we saw in the Division 3. And that just, again, speaks to kind of what they've done as a unit, which is going to help them be more confident regardless of the result of the next heat that we see.
Oh, over the line it is for Western Washington. Not even another crew in sight. They really enjoyed that build through to the finish, and I think showing off for the crowds here in Gainesville. It will be then the crew from Embry-Riddle that take that second and all-important spot through to the grand final, leaving Jefferson to be the remaining crew that goes to the petite final. But I would really not want to mess with that Western Washington crew. That was a stamp of authority all over that 2 kilometers of racing, and they look pretty chuffed with that. Hands go in the air, and you know, a huge piece of energy I think that we really experienced speaking with the group, right? They just seemed so ready for this championship.
Yeah, very ready. Calm. They considered themselves sweet. To them, that was probably pretty sweet.
Yeah, it would have been very sweet. And yeah, I think as a group, they really, to me, were everything that's great about this sport, right? Like, they really enjoyed it. Fun came first. Their teammates came first. There was no chat about, you know, they didn't bring up the results really unless pushed and asked. It was about enjoying the process, enjoying what they've done. We're already now up with the second heat. In the first few strokes, Rollins go in 2, Humboldt in 3, and Seattle Pacific in lane number 4. And this crew from Humboldt in the middle is who we were talking about, perhaps being the ones that can challenge Western Washington if it all goes to the blueprint and to plan. But, you know, a turn out for the books here. Seattle Pacific going, do you know what? We're going to get our bow balls out in front in this first marker.
Yeah, and I had a chance to talk to the coach from Seattle Pacific, that Kenzie Walter, and she was saying, you know, they felt traditionally that they were the underdogs, but surprised themselves this year with that D2 invite. They were in the fight. And they were surprised to maybe not be the underdog, but they have that mentality. They want to dig in, but they're right up there with the leaders here in this race.
They are right up there. The Falcons swooping in to this first 500 meters with a charge to try and take it to their neighboring statesmen from California, who are slipping back here. It's a couple of seats now that Seattle Pacific have managed to eke out ahead of Humboldt. This would be really surprising if this result maintains. Obviously, it's a 2-kilometer race. We need to remember that. And we've seen sort of excited crews go out and then slip back in that third 500. But yeah, Grace, talk to me about this.
Yeah, one thing that I also picked up from the Seattle Pacific crew was one of the sayings that they've had, again, because they were surprising themselves of having traditionally been an underdog, but seeing themselves be really competitive. They've stepped up to do the hard things. Their team saying is, why not?
Why not? You can see that, right? Like, that has not surprised me one bit, that you're like, they say why not. That's the kind of why not that we're looking at, right? In this kind of race, on the biggest stage that they've got, end of season, end of, you know, senior careers, like you say, for some athletes, it's why can't we do this? Why can't we go out the blocks and beat the people that have been chosen as the seeded crew in this round?
And you can see good length coming from this crew as well, like really good length, about 3/4 of the length. Not, I'm talking about length in the stroke itself, but they also have about 3/4 of the length in terms of their lead right now. Seattle Pacific, we've seen them have decent speed in their 4, but we haven't seen them have like solid speed in the 8, and this is what we're seeing now here, which is amazing. Humboldt traveled earlier this year to Florida to race Embry-Riddle and Rollins, so Rollins, the far crew on the other side, Humboldt has already seen in the season, so maybe that would be a confidence boost. And again, they specifically said they've found more speed in the last couple of weeks as they've made some adjustments, so the distance that they have between them and Rollins could be a confidence boost, a reassurance that, sure, we actually did. We sure did. We made more speed. Can we find even more before our next race? This is a solid margin that Seattle Pacific has here in terms of the distance that they have over the next placed crew. So we keep talking about confidence. This is a confidence boost. It's going to take a little bit for Humboldt at this point to make some sort of adjustment to come back into that lead at this point in the race.
Yeah, it's super rare, isn't it? 8s racing, usually whoever's out in the lead at the K It's very rare for that to be overturned, and you know, they've gone out with a lot of bravery, I think, to get this kind of margin over Humboldt in the early stages. They've just not got to let that slip now. But we're not even at halfway. No, that is the halfway marker. Huge margin, over 4 seconds now over Humboldt. Grace, what is it that Seattle Pacific are doing here kind of technically? For me, it looks like they've got a really good swing, lots of momentum, but anything else that you can see?
I think picking it up at the right point. They're doing it together, and it's harder to feel in that tailwind and in a cross tail. But Seattle notorious for maybe having some swirly wind that they have to deal with on the regular, so this is not unfamiliar to them. But again, only top 2 advance out of this. So, you know, Humboldt might be sitting farther back a little bit calm, knowing that Seattle Pacific's out ahead, and they know that they're doing well. They're jazzed right now, but they're holding maybe something in reserve because they are looking forward to having the showdown later today.
Yeah, because, you know, this race is simply the stepping stone, right? It's the pathway to the final. Yes, I think you need to get a feel for the conditions. This is the first head-to-head race that they've got here this weekend, and their second will be the final. So look at this, so lively, so lovely to see them out in front, creating even more distance here.
And that's the important thing. In a little bit of a tailwind, as the boat's going to move a little bit faster, it's going to be lighter feeling, so it's harder to get that bite on the water early on, which is going to help you be springy in the boat. And that's where, if you miss that, you're not going to get the effectiveness per stroke. And right now, Seattle Pacific is having the greatest amount of effectiveness per stroke here. They're keeping up with the speed of the water here.
And you can see that, looking at the crews side by side, you can see their liveliness. You can see that they're really utilizing the conditions. I think Humboldt rowing really long, rowing really strong, but I think if the wind was flipped and we were rowing into a headwind, that would be really effective for them, right? But like, you've got to utilize the conditions around you. You've got to pick it up, like you say, Lindsay. You've got to really go with the speed of the boat, and Seattle Pacific are just going with it.
I would say 2 differences here in the 2 lead crews here that are well out in front of the 3rd place crew in the race right now, which is going to be Rollins, is that Humboldt's just a little longer with the body in the front end, which might make it a little challenging for them to be quick out of the bow, whereas in the lead crew with the red blades here on the right of the picture is going to be Seattle Pacific. They're just, arms are long rather than getting so much body angle, and that's helping them really drive into the hips and use their legs a little bit better here.
So, story of the race as we come into the final 250 meters, it's been all about Seattle Pacific. They got a great, brave, really gutsy start out of the blocks and have just not let up. Humboldt, they managed to maintain overlap until the halfway marker, but still sit in second and are just letting Seattle Pacific row away from them with that Jefferson crew off the back in 3rd. Almost certainly, if nothing changes, it will probably be Rollins that will go into the petite final. But look at this. This is just remarkable stuff here from this crew, and putting on a show for the crowd. I think the rating has come up ever so slightly. They're not happy to settle for the open water finish here, and just wanting to practice that wind into the line.
And probably an incredible boost of confidence for first-year head coach Kenzie Walter, taking over from the longtime head coach Caitlin McLean. So what a great start to her coaching career here at Seattle Pacific.
It will be the Falcons that will take the win here in this second heat of the Division 2-8. A brilliant performance for Kenzie Walter's squad in her sort of opening stages of her coaching career with the group, but Humboldt will settle for second. There will be a grudge match to be had in the final later on today, and Rollins will match up against Jefferson in the petite final should all of those results be confirmed. So we move from these 8 races. We're going to see 4s lining up in a second in this Division 2 competition. And in this first heat, we're going to have Seattle Pacific, Western Washington and Embry-Riddle in lanes 2, 3 and 4. So going from the left of your picture across to the right-hand side of your picture. Now, Lindsay, coxed 4s. Different kind of boat here to what we've just seen in the 8s all morning. What are the changes that we're looking out for here in this race?
First of all, the coxswain's got to be in front. That's going to be the first person to cross the finish line. It's a different load in terms of the weight of the boat, the way that it feels in terms of the boat speed itself. Tailwind's actually probably going to be nice for a lot of these crews because it's a much longer race. Also, it's a 4, so the fewer people that you have in the boat, the smaller that it is, it's going to be tippier, it's going to be more challenging to actually row. Each of these rowers has a much greater impact on the lateral movement of the boat, the way that it feels in terms of uniformity, in terms of togetherness. You can notice subtle changes a lot more easily in a 4 than you might notice in an 8, which is an interesting kind of progression of boat size, because you need to have really good technical dexterity to row these boats well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think that technical dexterity is, I think, really gained by jumping in and out of those different crews, feeling the differences, being able to hone a good group together in the 4 coming into this season will have been built through the season, right? Of them like experiencing the different feels of the different boats and then taking all of that information and applying it here to the Cox 4. Out in front, it is the crew from Western Washington in the center of the course. Great to see Malaya May in the coxswain seat. We had a great chat with her yesterday in her senior year. This is her last championships here at the NCAAs, and well, I think looking forward to stamping all over this race with their authority, and they are looking brilliant out here in front. These are the guys that were just honestly sweet as pie, weren't they? Talking to them, it was like rainbows and butterflies. And,
Yeah,
it was amazing. They were just so happy to be here.
So happy, but still really intense. And one of the things that I really loved that the coxswain was being praised for was, you know, the meanness isn't motivating, and they're using each other as fuel. Like they're also using the rest of their competitors and the tremendous respect they have across their division to really fuel them forward, which is exactly what you want and is really such a positive place to keep chasing down instead of running from something. Such a powerful motivator.
And that's what she'll be saying out here in front, right? Is kind of like, think about your teammates, think about what are we doing well? What is it that we need to keep looking at, keep focusing on to keep producing these results? So Western Washington still out in front. It's then the crew from Embry-Riddle on the near side here with the yellow blades. The guys from down in Florida that are trying to keep tracks with Western Washington's leading opening moves. And then out the back, it's Seattle Pacific in that 3rd spot. Once again, a reminder, it's top 2 to advance to the grand final here. So if things stand, it will be Western Washington and Embry-Riddle. But early days yet. And, you know, I think it will be a fight here for the lead and the win. It's quite a big gap here for Seattle Pacific to try and bridge out there in 3rd.
You know, and when it turns into kind of a 2-boat race as you go along, you know, it makes the challenge for the coxswain, especially because they're now out in front, they have a really hard time seeing a trailing crew back behind them. So it makes their job a little bit easier from a what's going on in the rest of the field kind of standpoint. One of the things that we picked up from the Western Washington crew overall, the entire squad, was that they really is that trust of the process, doing what you do, and really focusing on yourselves and not the external things, which is, I mean, if that is what the coach has instilled in you and that is actually what you genuinely believe as an athlete, you know that you have done your job as a coach. If you can send your athletes away from the dock and they feel that way, you know that they are going to be much more attuned to just, you know what, row your race, worry about no one else but yourselves.
And they're going to need to keep that sort of internal feeling, because the guys from Embry-Riddle are not diminishing. They're not going away, and the crew will be able to see Embry-Riddle, but the cox in Malaya won't be able to see that crew. So she's relying on that crew to trust the process, to stay internal, to not get wandering eyes across to the left-hand side, to see that Embry-Riddle are just one length down. Very feasible here for Embry-Riddle to build into the second 1,000 and try and seek a challenge.
Yeah, I'm curious if that grit that they are so hanging on to is something that's going to pay off in the middle 1,000 of this race. I mean, all the competitors out here are tough, but especially tough with just the academic rigor of being an aeronautical school. I mean, they have to be precise. They have to be, and they know they don't need that off the front end. It's through the meat in the middle. Can you stay consistent? Can you keep fighting? So we'll see if they can claw their way back in.
Yeah, and again, like the Embry-Riddle guys, they were saying that they've relied a lot on their more experienced members of the team, a lot of their kind of their few and far between leaders that have stayed with the program to really instill that grit, to really like get that buy-in from the rest of the team, and to also sort of push those boundaries. Has to come from within, has to come from the athletes. And yeah, Embry-Riddle, you know, relying on those few sort of rainmakers to bring the rest of the group up with them.
And because we learned yesterday that they lost some athletes in the fall. And so they had just enough people to field their 8 and their 4. So they are exact to their capacity right here, and they are demonstrating that we might be this nuclear team, but the more that you kind of create that nuclear team where you're really tight in the middle, it can be very powerful, kind of emanating out from that center years to come. So right now, set the tone with what you have, be the fastest that you can, do everything you can with what you have, and right now, they're still in earshot of Western Washington. They can still hear them, feel them, and that's going to help them stay confident that they can be connected in this race as they move forward.
And again, talking of the advantage that Embry-Riddle will have here over Western Washington, their cocks will be able to count them in. They'll be able to see the moves that Western Washington are making out in front, call them into making big moves, precise moves as a group together, whereas Western Washington, like I say, they're just but being out in front is fantastic. They've got the advantage of looking back on their competition, but their cocks can't see that. They can't match the calls to their position in the race necessarily that well without disrupting the boat and taking a big look over our shoulder.
What you see in an increasing amount at the Division II and Division III level is new athletes, novice athletes, walk-on athletes. They are still very prevalent at these particular levels. Western Washington has 13 what they call novices on their squad, and so there is a lot of youth there. They're basically taking athleticism and specifically putting it into this sport. And when you do that, it really kind of broadens the horizon of what can be possible moving forward. You bring in the right people, you teach them the skill, and then they can create the speed.
Yeah, and again, you talk about Western Washington's program of 13 novices. I think Embry-Riddle in a really similar position, right? All but 4 of their program, all but 4 of their athletes this year are walk-ons. Yeah. So it's, again, 2 very, sort of green programs here, green sets of athletes experiencing a huge stage, probably the biggest they've ever experienced here. Pressure's on, first race, and what a fantastic race it is. I think all of the crews and programs, but especially these leading 2 that have been embroiled in this great little tussle down the course, should be very proud of this opening heat, and long may it continue in towards this afternoon's final should the results stand. But Western Washington, they've done just enough to stay ahead the whole way down this course. There were a few times I thought Embry-Riddle were going to catch them, and they just responded and kept it at that just over a length, right?
Good at playing defense once they were up ahead. They can react, they can see, they can just keep it just ahead. We see a little bit more energy here. They're kind of putting on a little bit of a show for those last 10, 15 strokes to trial it out. But it is looking like Western Washington will get the best of Embry-Riddle in this heat. They'll see each other again in the final.
Well, there we go, over the line to conclude this first heat of the 4s, and the first 4s we've seen this weekend. There will be more to come as we move up into the Division 1 racing very shortly. We're on to Division 1 at 8:34 local time. Just one more race in Division 2. That's the second heat of the 4s that will be coming up ever so shortly. But little taps on the water there for Western Washington. They're not hiding their
I was going to say
with that race. And big arms in the air there for Malaya May, who in this final year of competition for her.
And it's impressive because they don't know how their varsity 8 did. They don't know how the rest of the team did. They only know how they did at this point. So I can imagine we might see some more splashing once we won't see it, but somebody on the dock might see it once they realize how the rest of the team has done.
Well, we're not messing around here on the opening day of competition at the NCAAs, because we're already on to the second heat of these Division 2 4s. Jefferson go in 2, Humboldt in 3, and Rollins go in lane number 4, closest to us. And you could throw a blanket over these crews in the first minute. It is purely a deck that separates Humboldt from the rest of this field, and really nothing much to choose between Rollins and Jefferson that flank them either side.
It'll be really exciting for Jefferson or Rollins to get one of their crews into the grand final later today, because of how their 8s are done. Again, these athletes don't know that, but it'll be very exciting for them and their program. So it looks like we've got Humboldt out in front. Rollins and Jefferson very, very close.
Yeah, very close. And in fact, I think Rollins just starting to make a charge here. Christina Rothman will be saying, look, you've settled into a great rhythm. You're pulling up alongside, using that kind of long-term rhythm alongside Humboldt. And actually, I think they're trying to push away from that third position for Jefferson.
Both of these, I mean, they look very clean here. For being in fours, you might expect them to be rocking around a little bit until they stabilize their rhythm as they lengthen off of their starts into kind of their base once they lengthen there. And both of the, as we looked across a few moments ago, you could just see that everybody was rowing really nicely and cleanly there. We have 3 returners in the Humboldt boat from last year. From last year's 4, a lot of returning athletes in both their 8 and their 4, but to have 75% of your crew back from last year, you know, it's going to give them the opportunity to have taken a number of strokes together to be cleaner and learn more about each other and kind of get into the details of the nuance of having spent enough time together to assess those things and adjust them.
And again, I think having all of those returners, especially in a boat where, you know, in an 8, it's maybe a little bit more diluted, right? It's a much bigger group of athletes. You condense that down to a 4. You are 25% of what that boat is, you know, you're responsible for 25% of what that boat is producing. And so having been together as a unit, that all adds up. So Humboldt out in the lead, but you know, I'm really impressed by what Rollins is doing here. They are chasing down that lead, and I'm going to be really intrigued to see how Humboldt responds to this, because their coach Matt was talking about the thing he really liked about this group was that they were good at the dark times. They were good when it was difficult, when it was tough, through the winter months and through the really challenging ergometers, through those really, really sticky periods. That's where they shined. And so I think with pressure on them, pressure makes diamonds, it seems, for Humboldt. And this is where hopefully, you know, all of that tough work that Matt was talking about will come to fruition, because these are the tough times that you will get during racing, right? Is, you know, you're half a length up, not comfortable, not satisfactory, and you've still got 3rd place as well, nipping on the heels of this competition with only 2 spaces to go through, Grace.
Yeah, looking over at Jefferson, top of the screen here, Humboldt said that they hadn't yet raced Jefferson. They don't know what speed Jefferson really has on them, and Jefferson is doing a great surprise here coming into the 1,000. Really so close to Rollins in trying to put down a fight. Top 2 advance. They're trying to get themselves into that fight. Humboldt still saying calm and relaxed. I think one of their sayings too was just pull freaking hard. You know, pull freaking hard, but do it controlled in this tailwind. You don't want to pull, you know, too far out of control. So it's a balance to execute well.
Yeah, exactly. And finding that balance when times are intense, when they're tough, when it is, when it's that fight or flight, right? You've got to be able to calm yourself down enough to pull frickin' hard, but also to remember everything that you have trained and practiced with that doesn't let up, you know, some of those technical points, some of the sort of physical points as well.
One of the things that they talked about yesterday was that they have a tendency to overthink, to think a lot in both of their 4 and their 8. That's the Humboldt crew, but they've convinced themselves to really lean into the fun of it, which right now they've gained about another quarter of a length on the other 2 crews that are flanking them, which you can see, even though Humboldt is out in front looking to be a length ahead of those other 2. Jefferson might be in 2nd place now. They have worked their way almost past the bow ball of Rollins here, who is on the near side of the picture, Jefferson in the dark hull in the back of the picture, and they've just been kind of very quietly working, no major drama, 1 stroke at a time.
I think we've had a change in 2nd place here. The challengers from the Schuylkill River over on the far side from Jefferson have been quietly and surreptitiously climbing their way through from that lane number 2, and I'm not sure that Rollins would have caught that move almost. You know, I think it's really difficult when you're separated by a lane and the crew that is next to you is the crew leading. There's a temptation to race the leaders, and actually they've forgotten about this 2nd place challenge to get into the final. And over on that far side, you know, Jefferson's work is paying off. They're now almost a deck up.
Yeah.
And they're also, the bow ball of Jefferson is now on the stroke seat of Humboldt. That is probably a little bit of a surprise for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's still time here. They're just approaching the final 250 meters. There is all the opportunity here for Jefferson. The door is wide open for them to come and take this win. Talk about time to perfection, guys. I don't want to give them the commentator's curse here. But they're sliding up the outside of this Humboldt crew. This could be fantastic fantastic as a finish. Talk about confidence inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that staying clean here is the biggest thing for Jefferson to do, because they have been tidy enough that it has helped them just like an inch per stroke. You can see it's ever so slight that they've come back into the lead that Humboldt had, went from almost full length down to about half length down, maybe a little less than that. Humboldt is certainly answering. They're holding that a little bit more, but I think it was more actually that Jefferson caught a couple of bobbles that might have stalled out their advancement at that point. So again, just stay clean here at this point and continue to do what you're doing, because it's allowing you to at least go into those top 2 spots that advance to the grand final, and then you can maybe then catapult on that. Maybe what if we start doing this 500 meters sooner, 5 strokes sooner? Where can that get us in the next race? Right now, again, stay clean, because now they're about half length down to the longtime leader Humboldt.
Yeah, and Humboldt, trying to find that second win when you've been such predominant late race leaders for 1,500 meters. Not saying that they've rested on their laurels, but certainly they wouldn't have been prepared and sharpened for a Balboa-to-Balboa fight with Jefferson at this point in the race. They've just caught them napping that little bit. Humboldt having to find a response somewhere in their back pocket, which they are doing. They are keeping that sort of 3/4 of a length distance back on Jefferson. But the important thing for Jefferson is that they've managed to overhaul the challengers from Rollins. They did it quietly, they did it clinically, and they've created a huge gap of clear water back to 3rd place to get them into that grand final over the line. But my word, Humboldt happy, very pleased, but that's going to be a great fight for the final, and I think that Jefferson will have grand dreams and ideas that with a little bit more, maybe like you say, 150 meters earlier they start that charge, they could have had Humboldt on the line there. Well, we move from the final Division 2 opening heats now to Division 1. We're going to kick off with the Division 1 first 8 heats. So big names, big players lining up on the start line here, with 3 to advance through to the semi-finals. This opening heat, Michigan, Washington, Tennessee, Syracuse, and Oregon State, all seeking the top 3 places through to the A-B semi-finals. And out like a rocket go Oregon State here on the near side, but maybe perhaps no surprises given the season that they've had. Tennessee right out there at the front, Grace.
Yeah, and they've done very well, especially in tailwind conditions. So I'm not surprised to see them executing their short high strokes incredibly well, very precise. They're getting out of the blocks quickly. Now it looks like we've got Tennessee, Syracuse maybe in 2nd, Washington 3rd, Oregon, and then Michigan in that order. You can just see the Lady Vols there about 2 seats up on the rest of the field at this point of the race.
Yeah, lovely and sharp around the catch, lovely and loose, I think, which into this tailwind, like we say, you called it, Grace, they're rowing really well in the tailwind, and I think it's about that looseness, that ability to just drop the blade into the water, and look at them just cruising out here at the front of the field. And they're going to be keeping their eyes on Washington, who just start to appear there over 1 lane further back at the top of your picture.
Tennessee there in the blue tops, they really do not do a ton with their bodies anymore. They've simplified the stroke that allows them to be in this powerful, strong position, because, make no mistake, there is a lot of horsepower in this boat. They are very strong, and when you're in a position physically to allow you to manifest that strength, it's going to help the boat go even faster, especially when it's in a set of conditions that maybe are your favorite, because it lends itself to the quickness, to the speed of the hull. And Tennessee, we've seen have them through their conference championships compared to early on in the season be quicker, be fast off of the start, and then it's a matter of just staying high. They can row high rates for a long time. They have practiced that. It's clearly part of their training, and so it is something that you should expect from them all the way down the race course.
Well, we're only in the opening 500 meters we've just gone through, but it's very speedy out here indeed. A 129.1 for Tennessee out in front. Washington still holding 2nd, but Syracuse here, Grace, just starting to show for that 3rd position. I think it's going to be a tight battle, though, with Michigan over on the far side.
Yeah, at this point in the race, Michigan is further up on Washington than what I recall from the conference championships, the Big Ten. So they know that if they can just hook on to Washington's speed, try to hold with them, they might be able to best Syracuse.
Well, this is, again, we're in the opening heat. This is all about kind of shaking the cobwebs out, getting those initial nervy strokes out of the way, and producing something that is clean, something that is secure. We've got semi-finals probably later on today. They were supposed to be tomorrow, but again, a reminder, because of that inclement weather that's predicted, they've been pulled forward, we think, to this afternoon. The final call will be made about 11:30 local time, but they could be facing 2 races here today. Interesting the impact that's going to have on this second half of the race. Are they just going to sit and protect their position and act on that defense, like we heard earlier, Grace, talking defensively to get them into those AB semi-finals, Lindsay?
You know, the way that the women's NCAA at the Division I level has gone is the middle of the pack has just got so tight. You might have a couple of crews that are, even right now, to be a half of a length up, you know, if you're in the top 5 in the country, is actually a lot by comparison to what we see with 20 crews that are all within 3 seconds of each other. Like, that's literally how this could shake out. So to have a second is a lot when you do it as a proportion of that. So, you know, seeing this tightness with Syracuse up there, with Washington up there, with crews that maybe we weren't expecting, considering the ranking difference between Syracuse and Washington coming into this event. But again, everyone here, you talk about the comfort, the shakeout, the cobwebs. Because of the tightness of the field, they have to go with everything they have. Like, this is the final period.
No margin for error. For the first stroke of the championships, you're right. No margin for error whatsoever. And Syracuse here, sorry, just to pull it back to the race, we've still got Tennessee out in front, but Syracuse have, I think, toppled Washington in that third in the start of the third 500. What's your take on that, Grace?
I mean, they have a lot of energy. They know if they are neck and neck, if they are in the fight, again, why not? You know, see what you can do. Syracuse has had a really good history in the recent years, and so they're looking to do a lot of upsets. I think they're happy with this performance now. They know they're in the fight. They can just see what they can do.
At the conference championship, this is an ACC team. The ACC has 5 teams here. That speaks to the strength, because Syracuse had a solid race, but they were not in the top of the ACC. They are here as an at-large. They were selected to come here based on their performance, because Stanford, Cal, Virginia are other teams that are in the ACC that they had to compete with. And right now, if they're on par with top in the country in the Varsity 8, that says a lot about either what they've learned in the last couple of weeks or the speed of the conferences.
Oh, Lindsay, I think you make an amazing point here. They've got a big wedge of overlap with Tennessee, who have been the sort of standout stars from the last couple of weeks. You know, that final run into this championships, everyone's turned their head and gone, Tennessee, oh my word, you know, they've come here, they've beaten Texas, they're ready to roll here at this championships. They are ranked the top varsity 8 in the country, and they've still got overlap, having not even won their conference championships. That's absolutely phenomenal stuff from Syracuse, and to be ahead of Washington, who clean swept the
NCAA events. They swept the Big Ten. The only event they didn't was their freshman 8, but incredibly deep program, and so they know they've got a lot of horse and a lot of meat to their team. But Syracuse and Tennessee, there must be something about orange in this race.
All about the orange. We've got a lot of orange coming up as well. Lindsay, you know, we've got UVA coming up, a few others. So, if you're wearing orange here on Lake Lanier, it looks like you're in for a good regatta, because Tennessee will cross the line just shy of Clearwater ahead of Syracuse, who, for me, I think were the standout performers here in this opening heat of the D1 Varsity 8. And then Washington will paddle themselves over the line. You know, they've secured that place into the AB semi-finals, but I think we'll be expecting bigger things from them when we get to the knockout rounds of competition to get to the final. Final positionings there, it was still Michigan that held on for 4th position ahead of Oregon State, but that final time, 6:03.2 for Tennessee. We'll keep an eye on that as we roll through these heats. Next up, I mean, we've got Boston, UFC, Texas, California, and Ohio State. Texas, with the middle lane seeding in the next round, we'll have to keep how that time compares, that 6:03 with Tennessee.
I mean, and there was overlap with Oregon State and Michigan as well. So seeing teams that didn't race in the same conferences, this is showing, you know, how strong are these different conferences relative to one another.
Well, talk to me, because, you know, I've had to learn a lot over the last few weeks about how the conferences work, how we get to this place here at the NCAAs with these teams racing. Talk to me about how the sort of conferences feed up. When do they take place? You know, what does the qualification look like?
All of the automatic qualification conferences happen on the same weekend, either Friday, Saturday, Sunday, this 2 weeks basically prior to NCAAs. The SEC is not a qualifying conference because it only has 4 rowing schools in it. You have to have 6 rowing schools to have that automatic qualification. So the SEC took place just under a week ahead of all of the remaining conferences. So 10 of the 22 crews here for the Division 1 came here because they won their conference. The other 12 were selected based on overall images. I don't envy those judges. It was a hard decision this year, I'm certain.
Well, yeah, a very tough decision indeed from what I've heard. Let's jump back into this second heat of 4 in these D1 Varsity 8s. Boston on the far side of your picture, UCF in the next lane over in lane 2, then Texas, then California, then Ohio State. And it's as expected at the moment. Maya Meshklite there holding down the 5 seat in the Texas crew. Big power in the center of that boat in particular. Cal lining up next to them, currently in second place. And, well, I think this is a battle of 2 very big programs here, Lindsay, that we always expect to produce gold here at the NCAAs.
You know, this, again, this is another picture with Syracuse. Cal comes out of the ACC. They had a decent showing there, but they did not win the conference, and here they are, lined up against one of the teams that has been ranked number 1, not just this year, but in previous years. Texas has had a phenomenal series of years since head coach Dave O'Neill has been there. Dave O'Neill was at Cal before he went to Texas, so seeing Cal back up in the hunt here, you know, maybe a point of pride for him, honestly, too, even though he's no longer there. But great showing for Cal right now.
Yeah, and particularly, you know, Cal, the last time that they won the Varsity 8s was all the way back in 2018. So it's been a long time. Texas, far more success in recent years. You know, 3 out of the last 5 years, the Varsity 8's gone to Texas. Like you say, Lindsay, big program, big reputation. But Cal wanting to ruffle some feathers here in the opening heat. And I can't choose between these 2 barrel balls. Cal really with a bit between their teeth here, Grace.
Yeah, then you can see the energy out of the crew, too. So we were talking about earlier races with those who were able to handle the tailwind really well, having like the pickup really light and quick. They're able to leverage that. Texas, we know, have a lot of really, really strong athletes, so they're looking to pick up the load, so they're looking a little lower, looking a little bit more loaded, but 2 different tactics to get similar speeds.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that the Cal crew far more, they're sat upright at the catch, right? There's, again, that conversation about whether it's length versus like what is effective length. Cal just seems to be sat up really on top of this tailwind. Texas seems to be getting around the pin a lot more, which is very classic of their style. But again, you got to row to the conditions, right?
And that's what we saw actually with Texas and Tennessee, was that they stayed this longer round the pin kind of the length, whereas Tennessee just kind of clipped it up and off they went. It divides the work, right? If you make it a little lighter per stroke, then your stroke rate's a little higher, you can do the same work with less energy per stroke, which is going to help you, different energy per stroke. It's going to help you be more repeatable over time rather than really doing a lot of muscular work. That's really going to drain you. If you go on more aerobic quickness, you're going to be able to turn around a lot quicker for the next race, let alone the next stroke.
Exactly, and again, they'll be having that in the back of their minds. There will be a next race today, possibly, which is, again, not what they were anticipating, not what they were expecting to have the semi-finals this afternoon, perhaps. We'll wait for that call. It is now the crew from Texas that's starting to edge away from Cal. That early enthusiasm from the West Coast team just starting to dwindle slightly, but they'll be happy enough holding that second place to get them into the semi-finals. What I'm really intrigued by is this battle for third. It was UCF from Florida that were holding down that third place, but I think they're going to need to be very careful of what Ohio State's got to throw at them here, because they're creeping up here from the other side of the lake, almost what we saw this morning in the Division 2 and 3 races, where they're separated by a mass of water, and they've got to watch out because they could lose a place here in the AB semi-finals, something that, again, UCF were so keen to establish. They want that top 10 placing, right?
Yeah, the top 10 is exactly, they were 15th last year, so this is their opportunity to get that shot. So their aim is top 10. They must go through top 3 here in order to have a shot at that top 10, because if they go top 3 here, puts them in the AB semi, which puts them in the top 12 at minimum in the country. So that would be an advancement for them. Another interesting head coach of UCF rode for and coached with the head coach of the Texas crew. So an interesting coaching tree happening on the water here for what looks to be 1-2-4, 1-2-3 here.
Yeah, I mean, Texas are now starting to glide away from that initial battle with Cal. Cal rowing in open water in second place, ahead of UCF, who now start to show their form here. And it was fascinating talking to Mara Allen, who you just were mentioning there. Their style and their psychological attitude, to this championships and being part of the UCF squad is like this. If this is what you want, come here and do it. But if you don't want this, I want to coach the people who want to be here and achieve these great things. And UCF, they're just so determined with that, right?
Yeah, and when it's this hard, this is not easy. You have to want to be there more than anything else. And Coach Mara makes that clear. Make it yours. This is not my decision. What do you want? And that's a big, important question to ask your athletes, because the race is going to ask it even harder.
And they are being asked questions here all the way down to the line. They certainly don't have a comfortable third place position to get them into that AB semi-finals. It is clear to me that it will be Texas that take the win here. It will be Cal that takes second position, but it's third place. It's still up for grabs here, and the kitchen sink is being thrown by Ohio State into the final 10 strokes. Can UCF hold on? Can Mara Allen achieve that top 10? It is going to be nothing between them, a photo finish. If anything, I think the surge might have been with Ohio State there, but I don't want to call it. We'll wait for the official results to come through, but that would be heartbreaking for UCF, who came here with high hopes for that top 10 positioning.
It might be Texas might have hurt us as well, kind of going through there where that was close with Cal. They gave it quite a tight margin.
And the cheers go up for Ohio Site here on site, because that was a phenomenal final.